Let's have the funeral. Red Wing season ended last night, and it was in the most poetic way possible. They jumped them. For many of you that watch the game, you know what we're talking about. They jumped them like 23, 24 shots in the opening period, a lead, the urgency that we had been missing all year, the overdue energy that we had been missing all season. And of course, it didn't last.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't sustain.
It showed up for one period with 6 games left.
Yeah, John, that's the thing. You get to the third period, and it's, do or die. Tie game. Find what you're made of. And they put 2 shots on net and blew it. I mean, that is who they are as a hockey team. It's a fitting, poetic exit. And we can do the taps routine. We could do the funeral today. But even in the first period when they were winning, you were kind of irked.
Well, I was irked because I could just see the storyline. You know, it's unlikely, even if they won that game, that they were going to make the playoffs. And the storyline was going to be, oh, well, we fought to the bitter end. Well,
not really. Not
really, yeah. I mean, it's what? Where were you in the month of March? Where was the sense of urgency when you could actually make a difference, an impact on your record, the points? You got 8 points in the month of March. You can't make the playoffs that way. You just simply can't. When you were a team that was just fighting to be above the cut line or be right there, you can't go an entire month and actually a little bit longer because it goes into February and it strings into a little bit at the beginning of April. You can't go that long and only get 8 points.
I go a step further. The way they lost the game also included a blunder from Hull in front of the net, getting bodied and outworked by a smaller player in Cole Caulfield. Hull, the bane of our existence as Red Wing fans, with a bad play. Tarasenko, what a disaster that signing has been. He has the critical turnover that leads to the game-winning goal. Comfer misses a wide-open net. I don't mean, he had half the net to shoot into. I mean, the goalie was standing behind the net. Comfer shot sails, not deflected as it appeared initially on TV, just flat-out misses it. These are Yzerman players. So our question today is, why did they fall short after being right there a year ago? Why did they fall short? Who do you blame? 248-539-9797.
Well, ultimately, the blame has to go on the general manager that put this team together.
Some people would fight you on that.
Well, okay, they could fight all they want, but these are his guys, these are his players, and the reason I say that is the one thing that I think the most glaring thing, not just the one thing, the glaring thing that this team is missing is toughness. Yeah. It's both physical and mental toughness. When you get to the end of the season, and as you approach March, you are in a playoff run. You are hoping to be able to make the playoffs, and you tank every single year. There's a physical toughness because there's nobody out there that's the enforcer. There's no one out there that is there's no aggression on the ice. We saw it for a period. That doesn't constitute a physical team. We saw it for one period. You have to be a team that has individuals that will enforce, that will set a standard of toughness, and then it goes to the mental side of things where if DeBrincat isn't the one that is scoring goals, then it has to be Kane or it has to be Larkin. It has to be somebody that steps up to make plays.
Yeah, and I think McClellan actually did a nice job describing toughness when he took the job. It's not exclusively a bunch of goons throwing elbows in the corners. Toughness is a lot of things. It's mental toughness as well. And this team is not mentally tough. That's a big issue. Because I get it. It's not 1980s hockey. It's not 1990s hockey. You do need a little more of that speed on the ice.
Well, yeah, you need some finesse, but you also have to be...
But your finesse players have to be tough players too, and that's back-checking, that's aggressive forecheck, it's fighting for loose pucks. It's not 2 shots on goal in the final period of relevance for your season. Like, that's a mental toughness issue. For all that had happened, they're out shooting them 3-1. It's the third period. You're in Montreal. It's a hostile environment. Their goalie's playing well. Your season's on the line, and you put 2 shots on net. That's pathetic. That's a mental toughness issue as much as it is, being big and burly and pushing people around. They need to do both, but it's just a toughness issue. And then you wonder, why is the roster built this way? This is done intentionally. Ken Holland didn't bring in these players.
Right, and the contracts have all expired.
Right. Anybody who was here from the Holland days was extended by Steve or replaced by Steve. I looked at Montreal, and I know the puck knowers will say they're not built for sustained success, but I'll look at what they did in half the time and wonder why Steve doesn't take more heat. Montreal in 2022 finished dead last, 55 points, worst team in hockey. They finished last in the division in 23 and 24. They're bad. Now they're in the playoffs. They had Nick Suzuki already, much like we already had Dylan Larkin, and you can do a comparison there if you'd like. But the next 3 point scorers on Montreal were drafted in the time Yzerman's been here. I say that not to suggest they've drafted better, but that they've had enough time here in Detroit to show progress, and they aren't. That's the big issue here. So I know people will say this is a big offseason for Yzerman, and he's got to win me over. We said that a year ago. I think he's lost a lot of the fan base.
It's withering away. There's no question. And the question is about the job that Steve Yzerman is doing and what will he do this offseason to make this team better. We asked that question going into last offseason. We asked it going into the offseason prior to that. And there's been nothing to get over the hump of actually getting in the playoffs. And I think there's another question. This one was brought up on Twitch. And it just like questioning Steve Yzerman in Detroit, I think this kind of goes along with it. Is the C on the right jersey?
It's a harsh conversation that probably needs to be had.
I don't know who else on this team you would put the C on. It's, the best option probably on this roster, but if you're talking about toughness, mental toughness, you also talked about leadership.
Yeah, and I don't know if people are ready to have the conversation because I think everybody collectively likes Dylan Larkin, Waterford native, homegrown. He's been through all the suffering, and he's a good hockey player. He might not be your elite number one center that you hoped he would be, but he's a good hockey player.
Hey,
and he wears his emotions on his sleeve, but he's also part of the problem. If you don't step up in these big games, if you're getting outplayed by their captain, Suzuki, you're part of the problem, dude.
We need to separate good guys and guys that we like from guys that are doing the job that they need to do.
Winners.
Yeah, just because you're not able to win doesn't mean you're a bad guy.
No, but my point is
there's always that correlation.
People bristle if you said this offseason there should be a conversation about stripping the C or trading Dylan Larkin. Not saying that you want to, but that he's on the table, he's available. I think people would bristle at it because of the first part, because of the likability.
I think these things should be on the table, but it's not necessarily his fault for sure. The bottom line is that, especially the last 2 years, or even you go back to 3 with the collapses in March, that's what this team's doing. The core of this team has been the same, throwing in Kane the last 2 years. And the last 2 years have been far worse than a couple years ago. They were still young then. The core continues to collapse when it matters most, after the trade deadline, right? When NHL teams usually say, all right, we got to get going here. Like if you've been a team that's sputtering, it's either now or never, and they fall apart. The core keeps doing that. So I think the team has a chemistry issue. That's why the things you said about Larkin are on the table, just like I think, I'm disappointed in the growth of Mo Seider. I expected more out of him. I expect him to be a true quarterback, number one on the point power play guy. I don't think he's that. I think you can have a conversation that he's a number 2 defenseman in this league. Not a number 1. You need another Mo Seider to go with Mo Seider to have a couple of great defensemen, right? Are you disappointed in Seider's growth?
Yes. Yeah, I thought that there was more offense coming, and I think some of this is he is forced to play brutal minutes in his own end, and some of that is the collective decor is pathetic here. I mean, think about the defense around Seider. I'm not trying to give him an excuse. I agree with your point. But look at the defense around him. Hull was a healthy scratch all last year, yet Yzerman put him on the ice all season. Petrie, when he plays, not very good. It's another Yzerman guy. Seriously, look around this room right now. Gustafsson, disappointing addition from the offseason. You know who's not here? Wallman. They had to give him away for some reason. And Gostisbehere, who was a puck mover who could get the puck out of his own end and create some offense. Those guys lighten the load on a Mo Seider.
All right, so what you're saying is that he's not able to play his game. Well, if he's not able to play his game 3 years ago, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
2 years ago, you're starting to say, man, we gotta let him play his game. We got to put people around him that makes him his best.
You're saying
this
he's not
year,
the star that you were hoping he would be.
Right.
He might just be a very good hockey player.
But if he could be a star and he's not allowed to do it because of the things you're saying, defensive liabilities elsewhere, shame on Steve Yzerman for putting Mo Seider in that position this deep into his career.
I think that's well said. 248-539-9797. Let's knock out some phone calls. Sam and Pinckney, you're on 97.1.
So I think the problem is Steve Yzerman as the GM. And you're right, I don't think the team has chemistry. The reason the Wings failed this season is because of Yzerman, and he should be fired. Because if you ask yourself honestly, if it was any other coach who didn't have the name Yzerman, he would have been fired last year or the year before. And then with the trade line, when he told the players don't expect any help, he's not trying to help this team. He has to go. I don't care who they replace him with. Anyone is better than him.
I think some of the frustration is there doesn't appear to be enough urgency. And
there's no urgency on the ice. There's no urgency in the front office. There's no urgency in the organization.
And when you have a lifetime contract, that tends to be what happens.
I get connecting those dots.
You don't think he has a lifetime contract?
He may. That's not.
But is that part of the issue?
I can't go to a spot where I could say he's doing it wrong, but I think he certainly still has the competitive fire. Same as he was as a player. That competitive fire doesn't leave. That competitiveness. Do you think he shows up and says, I'm okay with not being in the playoffs?
But then do something about it.
So he's just doing a bad job. Yeah. But I'm not going to sit there and say that he's not competitive enough. He's just not doing it the right way.
Fine. That's a distinction we can make then. That he is a competitive person. He just doesn't act like it.
I don't know. I don't necessarily know that. I think the moves have been wrong.
Okay. I think it's a fair question about the competitiveness. Other teams are making moves to win. We're treading water. Actually going backwards. And we could say this offseason will be the one that he really gives it the old college try. Okay. We said that last year. And an offseason where they signed Sider and Raymond and were really locking in the core, and could they put players around them? The players they put around them, maybe you're right, John. Maybe he's just bad at it because the players he brought in aren't very good.